Jeff is an executive-level creative leader with vast experience with high-profile clients in advertising and broadcasting, including clients such as AT&T, Chevron, the Weather Channel, the High Museum, and TBS. Jeff is the winner of 3 National Emmy Awards, and he's fluent in all aspects of internal team building and client-facing presentations. Jeff has designed and directed dozens of award-winning projects using any and all available technical means, including live action, computer animation, motion control, motion graphics, digital media, and typography. He's passionate about bringing the TV consumer experience to truly integrated communications across the full range of digital platforms for broadcasting, advertising, and entertainment clients. Please give it up for Jeff Doud.
Thanks. That was nice. Thanks, Craig. I wanted to thank Blake and Jonathan and Craig for helping me out to do this, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Congratulations, everybody, on your first year. That's great news. As I mentioned, my name is Jeff Doud. It's easy to remember, 2 4-letter words. I have a friend named Ian Tom. He has a name with 2 3-letter words. Both first names. It's hard to beat that on economy. So I had a great idea recently, and I knew this was a great idea because when I told my wife about it, she laughed hysterically. And that's saying a lot because she doesn't humor me very much at all. In fact, she considers me a walking cartoon and tries not to encourage me. So I invented this character named Mr. Nicely. Mr. Nicely is a cheery, jovial British chap who is an undeterred, positively motivated guy who promotes my work wherever possible. So I designed a logo for us to start this partnership. It's much in the style of an old English law firm. And we launched a website to house the work, and you guessed it, nicely endowed. Just ask my wife. So you can check out some of the recent work at mrnicely.com. If you want to dig deep, and I mean deep, into the archive, please look me up at Vimeo. And if you would like to see some of the lovely work being done by my colleagues and myself at Max Media, please check us out at maxmedia.com. But I did want to tell you a story. I promised you that. So let's start here. Pablo Picasso. Pablo is my hero in a number of ways, and let me tell you why. This is his famous painting, Guernica, done in 1937. And this is late in Pablo's career. He's starting to capture an affinity for the bull. You see the bull on the upper left there. He was also kind of fond of the Minotaur, which is sort of a mythical, half animal, half human. I think our creative director, David Stone, is a Minotaur. I know that because he keeps his head shaved all the time, and I've never seen his toes. But anyway, it's interesting that he would adopt this as his own sort of persona, because in 1940, just 3 years later, the Lascaux caves in France were discovered by a group of kids running around in the hills. This was done 17,000 years ago. These are pretty old, and at that time, humans were only 18,000 years old, so relatively young. And somehow, Pablo Picasso managed to get a visit to the caves before they were open to the public, and he went to there, and the story goes that he was so moved by finding this delineation of pure spirit, this existence of a human inner soul and his own recognition that existed in himself in the same way that it did for somebody 17,000 years ago, was so moving that he was brought to his knees and wept. Well, the more well-documented story is that in his own condescending way, he emerged from the caves and said, "We've discovered nothing," which is his own grumpy way of saying that not only had he discovered his inner child, but also his inner caveman. And Picasso stayed with this theme a long time as the years went on. But Picasso was really a Goliath in the industry. He was really the biggest dog in the yard and can do whatever he wanted. And here he is, seemingly saying, "Don't mess with me, I am the bull." And interestingly, I found this photograph on a blog site for Patek Philippe watches. And you know, you look at the picture, you go, "Pablo, you look good, you look good." And God, doesn't his head look photoshopped on? But I digress. Anyway, I was never able to authenticate that photograph, but some years ago, a friend of mine sent me a calendar, and on every page of the calendar was a picture of a famous artist, and when I got to May, there was this picture. And this was really inspiring to me because I thought maybe it was possible for me to capture Pablo's spirit in some way, that maybe through my own power of persuasion, my own strength of vision, that I could get my clients eating out of my hand and just do whatever I wanted with my creative vision. It took me a little while to get around to another more mature viewpoint, and this is my first secret for the day, that unless you're Picasso, don't bother being the bull, because the truth is, I was more of a David to Picasso's Goliath. I was surrounded by kids in school who were sons of famous architects and daughters of design professors, and I really was looking for a way to fit in. I didn't really know yet what my own identity, my own viewpoint, my own style would emerge to be. And that was how I kind of got started, and I was looking all around myself to try to find out what that inspiration was. And here's a few things that influenced me greatly. Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. This guy's a poet, a filmmaker, a graphic designer, photographer, set designer, you name it. He's a very, very bright guy. So bright that he could take anything that was happening at the time and do it better than anybody else. Plus, he has the benefit of having the most awesome name ever. I always wanted to have him over and say, "Hello, Laszlo. Would you fancy a glass of cognac to go with that pencil-thin mustache you've been wearing lately?" But Laszlo could really adopt anything. Here he is with Russian constructivism. He was extremely adept at adopting current ideas and taking them all the way. He started using a lot of collage techniques in photography, and it was really the photography that set him apart because he was seeing things through a new set of eyes. This was at a time when art and avant-garde photography was really coming into its own, and he was seeing things through a camera that could see things longer, shorter, depth of field tricks, and various ways of seeing the world that's not like seeing it through your human eyes at all. And he would take various kinds of photographs and grab them from different perspectives and collage them together through collage or multiple exposures and try to defy the laws of perspective and perception, which for me was really interesting. But it was when he really got around to the photogram that it kind of captured my attention. The photogram is not something that he invented. I think that credit goes to like Man Ray or Imogen Cunningham, somebody like that. But he published 40 volumes of this stuff, which was really interesting medium. He took this to new heights. He's constantly using this for implementing ideas around fantasy, feeling, intellect, very emotional kinds of studies. He even went so far as to build this machine called the light space modulator that was a machine that would turn and send reflections through glass and through metal, and he would use that and photograph it with a film camera. He felt that film was the purest form of human expression. This is a sample frame of one of his films, and I found this to be very inspiring. And this, for me, proved to be a direct link to the idea of painting with light on film, which got to be a very cutting-edge method for TV graphics back when computers started to first take control of cameras, which leads me to my secret number 2, which is try for things that you've never tried before. Go on a quest. Find your muse, your source for inspiration and originality. You should experiment and cross-train. This is where originality really lives, I think. So many of you know George Nelson. George Nelson is probably the most prominent industrial designer ever. And he, at Herman Miller, nurtured along the careers of Harry Bertoia, Isamu Noguchi, Charles Eames, and others. This guy had exquisite taste in design and in designers, and George Nelson Associates probably produced some of the most iconic home and office furniture ever. But he also gave some guidance for designers and fought the prejudice of what he called the visual illiterates, the people who confused design with style, the ones who didn't understand that the immediate apparent look of something wasn't the design at all. And one thing he said that resonated with me was that solving the problem is item number 1. Once we communicate the business issues and provide an actionable solution, only then can we pass that through the filter. A designer must employ the visual style. So his point is basically the visual style has nothing to do with the design itself, which is very important. And I found this to be true in presentations I've been involved in over the years, is that CEOs and CMOs really don't want to care about how cool you think the work is. They want to know how it answers their business objectives first and foremost. And if you can frame your work around that dialogue, I think you're going to win a lot more of the work that you really want to get done and have your work really appreciated and respected. So my secret number 3 is, yeah, they don't care. I cringed once when a coworker made a presentation and used the word tasty as part of the presentation. He goes, "This is going to be a tasty commercial," and the client just glared at him and then went ballistic. And that designer really learned his lesson. So I've seen emergence of cable television, the paint box, Harry, the revolution of the Macintosh, Flame, After Effects, and the greatest shift in entertainment ever, the interactivity and the web. And I have to say that the technology has changed over the years many, many times, but the one thing that hasn't changed is that the job still remains the same. You must solve the problem, but do it in the most impressive manner possible, and that's the stamp that you can put on it yourself. So Herb Lubalin deserves a mention because I was working for a typographer in school back in the day, and Herb started a magazine called Upper and Lower Case, which was very influential. He started this in 1970, and out of that he designed the typeface Avant-Garde, which in Herb's hands was always a fresh thing, unfortunately abused by thousands of designers in the decades that followed, but still great in Herb's hands. And he did something that resonates still today, in that he would do a full-page takeover of a typographic layout, and it really hadn't been done. And now you see that all the time in Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, Esquire magazine, and so forth. It's really become common, and I think we owe that to Herb. And he was always sort of witty and imaginative with his typographic solutions. So he made a statement for me that still resonates. Back when I was working for the typographer, we had a very prominent graphic designer named Roger Kennedy that we were working with. This guy was fanatic about all things Helvetica, and the spacing had to be perfect, and he was really very buttoned up. And one day he came in and he said, "I've designed this logo for you guys." This is the company I work for, Nicholas Preston. And this ampersand, Pistilli Roman, of course, was fairly popular in the 70s and had been seen a lot. It's probably the most curvaceous of all ampersands. But he had done something with it I hadn't seen before. And that's when it hit me, that if it's witty, it's interesting. It's not just one idea that makes it happen. It's more than one idea. And the two ideas together make an original concept. An example might be if you were going to make a page layout that had to do with cowboys and Indians, awesome. But if it's cowboys and Indians underwater, on another planet, probably a good chance you're doing something a little more original. So you never know where these kind of influences are coming from, and I've absorbed a lot of them, and they come from the strangest places, even here. You can say what you want about Andy. A lot of people thought he capitulated to consumerism, that the work was shallow, that it was calculated. But back in 1963, when I was a kid, my family and my cousins all went to the show at the LA County Museum of Art. This is my two brothers and my mom and my aunt and my two cousins, and we were surrounded by all this work. The exhibition was pretty much a knockout for me. Afterwards, it got to be a really interesting conversation with everybody because it came down to, what is the nature of art? Is this worth anything at all? What does it mean? And nobody really got it, but not only was I happy about that, I was giddy because for the first time, I was seeing a direct reflection of what my world was about, because I was a kid that was quickly graduating from swimming pools, baseball, and Saturday morning cartoons to a world filled with girls, cars, and surfing, and it was just like everything had sort of gelled at one time for me. It was like the world suddenly crystallized into a big picture, mesmerizing reflection of popular culture. And I should add that growing up in California in the 60s is pretty difficult to be pessimistic. I mean, when you've got sunny days, day after day, with no end in sight, it gives you a very optimistic outlook, and I think this has served me very well over the years in that I very rarely take a negative view of a situation, and I'm always kind of naturally looking for the best possible outcome to a project that we're working on. And then along came this commercial from Bob Abel and Associates in 1974. I was a sophomore in college when I first saw this, and it made a connection for me that I'd never seen before, and these were influences of Warhol, Peter Max, and everything else that could be rolled into one. Filtered through this painting with light technique that was just emerging. And when I saw this, it just caused me to create a whole different direction for my portfolio, and I changed everything, and sort of everything came together at this moment in time. Here's the spot.
7 up, 7 up, we see the light of 7 up.
We couldn't have made it through the day without something to show the way, without something to keep us going.
And you can't make it through the night if you don't have some kind of light that's showing.
7 up, 7 up, we see the light of 7 up, 7 up,
everybody get happy. This certainly makes me happy. I wanted to add that, who is happy here today? I'm happy. Woohoo! I'm happy because this is my 12,765th consecutive day of working in the business of mass media, or more specifically, broadcast design and interactive design. And I have 7 secrets, and my 5th one today is be a sponge and absorb the world around you, which is exactly what I did. And my dad had another way of putting this, and this is really kind of an expression of designing from your gut, free your mind from the tyranny of the journals and CA and the rest of it, and just try to be yourself. Use your human and personal experience that only you have to express it in your own way. And my dad used to like this particular play on letters. I used to have this as a license plate on my car, which I thought was pretty inspiring. I sort of lived by these words. But we have to sort of take a look at what's next, what's coming up. George Lois was a pretty big influence as well. He said this fairly, only George could do that. Obviously, he works for a magazine. He's thinking month to month. But there's a guy named Daniel Pink that put out a book last year that was fairly interesting, and he introduced this idea of now, near, and far. And the idea is that if you're concentrating so much on what you're doing every day, you might miss what's way down the road. And if you're thinking about what you're doing next week, you might not be as focused on what you're doing at the moment. So the goal for us is to really concentrate on all of these things at the same time. Keep your eyes open to what you're doing and what's around the corner and what could be a long-term trend that might affect your business. So I wanted to make this quick distinction that we've gone from a world of mass media, which TV being the example, is an opportunity to simultaneously touch a mass audience all at one time in a moment of time. And this has changed and given way to what I'm calling massive media, which is basically that all of these channels are open all the time, 24/7, all around the world. And that's a pretty big shift in the way that we grasp that stuff. This is something that I just couldn't ignore. This was one of my heroes early on, Marshall McLuhan. He's a big popular personality with media theorists. He was what they would call a technological determinist. He famously noted that all media are extensions of our human senses, bodies, and minds. And he understood that media should be considered in both time and space. And this was one of his famous things that he said, the medium is the message. And he famously predicted the emergence of the internet 30 years before it was invented. And this is where this message has evolved, I think, is that the message now is across all the media that we do. A transmedia kind of mentality that it's not just about TV, it's about everything. And things that we're doing now are platforms that include TV, of course, but companion apps that are driven by Facebook and Twitter. There are campaigns that deliver social connectivity to brands. We're talking about portals for sharing assets and content, product integration with entertainment, integrated transmedia campaigns, branded content around special events, touchscreen media for retail environments, interactive walls and branded environmental displays, iPad apps that link ideas with products. Literally everywhere there's an opportunity to connect images with brands, and increasingly our audience is in control of the experience. But this doesn't mean that the communication can't be just as soulful and entertaining as anything that you've done in the past through linear media. We're still solving the problem first and delivering it in the most impressive manner possible. So my secret number 6 is to dream big and certainly to make it your own. So if we see the whole picture, we're certainly more apt to stay ahead of the curve. I've been looking at a number of things over time that excite me from time to time. There's so many interesting new ideas emerging. We could spend a couple of hours looking at what these are. But I just wanted to show a couple of very short clips of some things that kind of caught my eye. The idea of code writing as an art form is getting some traction. Currently a developing concept. Does anybody know who Joshua Davis is? Josh Davis is an illustrator, and he's turned code writing into part of his art form. The implications for image generation in this thing is pretty interesting. This is just a quick clip of what Josh is doing.
Early on, I started getting into this idea of design technology, which is using technology and programming in my workflow to generate possibility. I write programs, whether they're static or they're based on animation, that are using code to generate artwork. So it never ends. You could spend a whole year feeding one program different artwork, and you would get completely different results.
So there's a new direction in storytelling that just kind of grabbed my attention. This next piece is an excerpt from Chris Milk's Arcade Fire video. Here he's using HTML5 to control the screen space, so there's multiple browsers appearing on on your monitor, but he's in control of how those happen. But he's asking you at the same time to input your childhood address of where you grew up, and he's using geolocation devices to make that a memorable journey, something that imprints on you and turns that storytelling into more than just a narrative, but something that's really emotionally compelling. And I have to say, when I first saw this, was the day that I said, I'm not going to think about TV as a holistic thing anymore. Sort of a long-range thing. This has been out for a couple of years now. It's called Sea Dragon. And I would ask you to imagine that if all of the entertainment that you've ever seen was available 24/7 on the cloud and it existed as data streams and completely released from pixel-based imagery as we know it now, what could happen if you had an interface that you could access that anytime, anywhere? This, to me, is pretty inspiring.
So this is an example of non-image data. This is Bleak House by Dickens. Every column is a chapter, and to prove to you that it's really text and not an image, we can do something like so, to really show that this is a real representation of the text. It's not a picture. Maybe this is a kind of an artificial way to read an ebook. I wouldn't recommend it. This is a more realistic case. This is an issue of The Guardian. Every large image is the beginning of a section, and this really gives you the joy and the good experience of reading the real paper version of a magazine or a newspaper. Which is an inherently multi-scale kind of medium. We've also done a little something with the corner of this particular issue of The Guardian. We've made up a fake ad that's very high resolution, much higher than you'd be able to get in an ordinary ad, and we've embedded extra content. You got to see the features of this car, you can see it here, or other models, or even technical specifications. And this really gets at some of these ideas about really doing away with those limits on screen real estate. We hope that this means no more pop-ups and other kind of rubbish like that should be necessary.
Somebody should be working on this right now. I hope this happens in my lifetime. I don't know if it will or not, but there's just so many opportunities for really delivering media to entertainment media to everyone. And right now the TV guide looks so antiquated, and it's been that way for so long. I just think it's time for that to go away. So here's an idea that you've all seen. Good, fast, cheap, pick two. This, to me, is the worst and most cynical dead end of creativity I've ever run into. Oh, I'm sorry. How about now? Good, fast, or cheap? Which one are you? I know friends of mine that are fast and cheap. A success model I prefer is this one. Trust, risk, and time and money. Because I found over and over again that if your client trusts you, they're more willing to take a risk. And if they're taking a risk, they're going to want to back that up by giving you enough time and money to have a fallout position should it not work out the way they wanted. So Blake wanted me to tell a little story here I thought was kind of interesting. It helps illustrate this point. I used to do lots and lots of work for TLC, the Discovery Network. And we had been doing projects regularly and pretty interesting work, and I got a call one day from the History Channel that asked me to get involved in a project that was in direct competition with one of the TLC projects. And so I called my friend Roger over there. I said, Roger, I've got this opportunity over at History Channel, and I just wanted to let you know about that. And there was this long pause, and he said, Jeff, I wish you wouldn't do that, because we think of you as our designer and not theirs. And I thought, wow. Obviously, we had a very close bond at the time, and I said, well, that's why I called, because I've been thinking about it a lot myself, and I think it's time we tried to find a project that we could take some serious risk with, something that we could win an Emmy with, something that we could go all the way with. And he said, well, thanks, I'll think about it and I'll call you back. And it was late in the day, and about a half an hour later he called back. He said, well, Jeff, I think you really ought to be in sales, because that was a pretty compelling argument. I said, but Roger, if I was in sales, I would never be able to have that kind of credibility to build that kind of trust with you. So he said that he did have a project called Superstructures of the World that we could take a shot at. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was their biggest promotable of the year, and we had 3 months to get the work done. And several months later, when we were standing on the stage in New York accepting the Emmy for that, he got all choked up and said, I can't believe it. It's like everything we said we'd do. And I was kind of choked up too, and all I could say was, thanks for trusting me. And that kind of trust is difficult to do, and there's so many roadblocks to it because the clients really want to put up resistance. They want to hit you with attitude. They want to put pressure and time and deadlines on you. And they basically want to take that trust away from you. They want to own that project. And you have to find a way to break it down and get them to know you and get them to break through. My own first boss and mentor, Harry Marks, had a great way of sort of cutting through that. He would pull this one out of a hat every now and then, which really had a chance to slow people down. I worked with another guy, Nick, who when the hoops would start jumping up and there's hoops of fire in front of everything we're doing, he would say in his Boston accent, okay, we're doing a lot of work here and we're going to try to get this all done, but nobody get weird. Which was great, and it makes people laugh and it makes them trust you. So my final secret for the day is to make friends everywhere. These are my own two mentors, Harry and Bob. I'm happy to say I'm still in contact with Harry on a regular basis. Bob passed away about 6 years ago. But Harry shared everything he knew with me, and I try to share everything I can with what I know to everybody in this creative community. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And for me, there's been no better opportunity or no better, more powerful strength in my own work than to draw from the perspective of my own life experience. And I would hope that you would do that too. I hope you find yours, because your dreams will come true if you want them. So this if you're, thanks. If you're born in 1970 or after, you just won't get it, so don't try. So to wrap up here, I think ultimately it's your journey that you'll be influenced by. The choices you make are very important with how it's going to turn out for you, and this has been made clear over and over again by another hero, Joseph Campbell. So my 7 secrets are these, and Joseph Campbell said the big question is whether you're going to be able to say a hearty yes to your journey. And I think that's the goal of the day. So what will be your story? And this was it from my perspective. Oh, and don't forget the words of my mostly silent partner, Mr. Nicely. Don't let him catch you with your knickers down. And thanks to my pals at Max Media for giving me some time to come up with something to share with you all today. And thanks for everybody coming out today.
All right, we have about 5 minutes or so for a few questions for Jeff. So if anybody wants to ask, go ahead. Make sure you repeat the question.
Okay, sure. I didn't anticipate any questions, so you could catch me off guard here. You're good. Yes?
What's next?
What is next? I think what is next is visual storytelling across interactive components that can connect lots and lots of different media simultaneously. Going back to the example of mass media versus massive media, I think the opportunity now is to do a lot of things for a lot of people over time and do it in the most compelling fashion possible, and that would be emotionally, storytelling that connects with people, creates memories, and makes it memorable. What else? Yes, sir.
How do you learn?
How do I learn? I'm glad you asked that question. This was something that when I was at school at Art Center years and years ago, one of our instructors said on the first day, listen, a lot of you don't need to be here right now. All you need to do is to learn how to learn, and once you've learned how to learn, there's nothing that you can't solve. So the answer to that, I think, is that if you put yourself in a position to always be absorbing new stuff, you can certainly answer the questions of the day and solve the problems, and that would be a way to get the job done. Continuing to learn, of course, is something you want to do for the rest of your life. If you stop doing that, I think that's when you begin to die. Not going to be me. What else? Yes, sir.
The trajectory that you illustrated over the course of your career is one of increasing visual sophistication and the more the visual side. What do you think is the place of written word and copy going forward in this?
Yeah. Well, I tend to believe that the written word of the copy line is the soul of the idea, and I'm not sure that you can really articulate a really good visual solution without first telling that story in words. I put a lot of value in the copywriting side of it. I'm not really a copywriter myself, so I really rely on people that I can work with to help me shape an idea, because the shape of that idea comes from the way that you articulate it to your clients. The CEOs, the CMOs that want to hear about what it is, you're not going to show them a funny picture or a cute picture or a cool picture and have them resonate with that at all. They need to know what that story is, and that comes from the copy side. So everything that we do, no matter how complex it gets visually, is always going to be driven by the words, at least in my humble opinion. What else? Certainly you have a question, Linda. And how about you, Lindsay? Anybody calculated what 765 days is? Well, in 100 years, there's only 36,500, so it's a lot. Questions?
What are you most excited about?
I'm excited about the same things I've always been excited about. It's like somehow, when I look in the mirror, it's always a scary thing, but if I don't look in the mirror, I'm still 18 or 22. And if I can keep that kind of youthful exuberance about the work, I think that I'll always stay young at heart, and that's the thing. I'm excited about that.
We have time for one more question.
Better be good. Yes, ma'am.
So there's this whole revolution with YouTube and online and video content, and been watching a lot of videos on people who are really making stuff in that medium and talking about it. And so I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on kind of traditional media versus this new sort of short form, crowdsourced, self-generated media, where you think kind of things are shifting because of that.
Well, there's room for accommodating a lot of those different things, but I came to the realization a couple of years ago that TV as the singular experience was really compromised, especially in the advertising space, because if it's 36% of a mass market and that mass market is changing to a massive media market, that there's no way that anybody should consider a campaign. I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question. Repeat the question. The question is, how about video in the media space moving forward? But I believe that everything that we're doing across all of these channels now will increasingly include video, whether that's user-generated or whether that's programmed, curated, or whatever it is. There's lots of space to do that. That's one of the big drivers that got me into the interactive side, is understanding that as broadband starts to really filter out across the world, that moving video is going to be part and parcel of that experience. It's not brochureware anymore, folks. It's moving video at all times in all places. That's where we're heading, I think.
Thank you. Let's give it up for Jeff Doud. Remember, next month is 1 week earlier on the third Friday, and we will be here at the High again after next month. We're going to be at a different location that we'll announce later. So thank you all. Have a great morning.
Thanks.